Everyone, whether or not you're considering applying for affirmative asylum in the United States, or maybe you already have and are have an interview notice, this is going to be a good overview of what to expect and think the key points about affirmative asylum. My name is Ruby Powers. I'm a board certified immigration attorney with Powers Law Group. I've written some books about law practice management, and if I'm not teaching about immigration, I'm usually teaching about law practice management. But we have a lot of experience in asylum here at Powers Law Group. Even before I became an attorney, when I worked in nonprofits and in law school, I was working on asylum cases. And so we calculated how many countries we've assisted clients from, and we think we're up to about 47 plus countries. We've listed some of them here, but we've had a high success rate, and it's a combination of choosing good cases and working really hard and diligently. We are predominantly in the Fifth Circuit, which is a little bit harder on asylum, but we do have cases all over the country, not only with affirmative, but also defensive, which is an immigration court. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, really basically it comes down to, did you have past persecution and or fear of future persecution on account of one of five protected grounds? So race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, which is really based off of a lot of case law, or you can try to create a new particular social group using prior case law, and then political opinion. In Spanish, they call this asilo político, which makes people think that it has to be only political, but it isn't. And in many cases, it's one of these other four reasons, including particular social group, which is constantly changing with case law. Now, the other thing is that sometimes things are intertwined, like politics and religion, or nationality and race, or even the membership in a particular social group with one of the others. And so sometimes I just prefer to check most of the boxes that relatively apply and then go into more detail in the interview. But it's important to remember the basics. And then that there's nowhere else you can go into your own country. Because if you could relocate somewhere else, then you don't have a case somewhere else in your country. You have to be able to explain that. And then you have no other citizenships or visas to go to anywhere in the world. If your spouse has one, for example, that's not you. If you're the primary, that's what's more important. And that you applied within 1 year of entry in the United States, but there are some exceptions, which are called the change in circumstances or extraordinary circumstances. So, for example, if a change happened after you had already overstayed for a while, and you can explain that, and you're in a jurisdiction that is very favorable to that, then you could possibly overcome that 1 year. Like Ninth Circuit's very favorable to the change circumstances. The Fifth Circuit's not as favorable to late filings. Usually about 6 months is about as long as I've seen be still successful. But anyway, just don't give up. You definitely have a consult with an experienced immigration attorney if you don't already have one. And that you have to be in the US. So this is asylum is you're in the US. Um, there were changes with the whole migrant protection protocols remain in Mexico, but we're talking about affirmative asylum here in the US. Okay, so the 1 year filing, was there change circumstances like a change in the law, a change in country conditions, like things got dramatically worse and then now you can't go back, or ending a relationship in a previous filing, like maybe you were on a case, your spouse's case, and now you're divorced, and so you need to have your own primary case. Um, or potentially you were a dependent, a child on a case, but you got married. No, you need to have your own case. Now, examples of extraordinary are a disability, extreme illness, death of legal representation, maintain lawful status. So like if you were an E2 and then you applied for asylum, or you were an F1 and then you applied, but it had been years that you had been there for a while. But you have to explain why you waited as long as you did. So these are important. So whether or not you're deciding whether to apply or you're preparing for your asylum interview, you want to make sure you've gone through these things so that you have the proof. For example, if you were maintaining a lawful status, you want to make sure that you have that proof of that status, because that's going to be really important in the interview. Now, what are the steps? If you arrive in the United States, you analyze your eligibility, then you apply, you'll get a receipt. You can apply online or over paper. If you apply online, you'll get the receipt really quickly. If you haven't already done fingerprints and background check biometrics, then they're going to have you do that. And then eventually you'll receive an interview. At the time of this episode, we're in May 2025, and right now around the country, they're starting to interview people from 2016. Just right now, the people that we're getting interviews for are filed in April 2016, to be specific. We're seeing this across the nation. We recently had a 2016 client in San Francisco. We have had a lot in Houston, and I'm hearing this is also in Arlington and other locations. This is what's happening right now. A lot of the asylum officers are not having interviews for people at the border because the people can't get in. And so they're diverting that energy and resources to having the interviews here in the United States and going to that backlog. I hear that they are entertaining expedite requests, and otherwise the only way we were getting interviews for that time frame was pretty much with a mandamus. Now, once you get an interview notice, it could anywhere be between 3 to 5 weeks in the future. I would say try really hard not to reschedule that, because it could get rescheduled really quickly, and it could also get have issues. So only if it's absolutely necessary. And then you have the interview, and then the officer's going to an interview can be a couple hours long. The asylum officer is going to make a determination, and then you'll either be told to come pick up the decision or it'll be mailed. Some things are changing around the country as to what they're doing. But it used to be that if you didn't have a status and you were told to come and to get to the decision, then you would be told. If you were in a status, then it would be mailed. But coming in could mean that they're also serving you with a notice to appear. Now, in your application, and whether or not you filed already and you're looking over your documents, make sure that you have the civil documents necessary, from birth certificate, marriage, divorce, whatever, to establish your marital relationship and any of the dependents on your case. Those things are, and it's not just having them, make sure that you have the English translation, the proper documents sealed, signed, all that good stuff. When an individual does the background checks, security checks, make sure you go on the time that you need to. You could probably go earlier, but make sure you do go on time and that you don't miss it, because that could cause delay. It could also mean that your clock doesn't continue, and your asylum clock is really important to being able to apply for work authorization so once you get that interview notice, like I said, they do have the last in, first out. So people who are applying right now could get an interview soon. Actually, we're seeing some of that. But then we're also seeing that people in 2016 are starting to get interviews. So it's interesting. There's not many people any coming to the border, so they have those resources, but also the Afghan surge is over. Those cases took about 2 years, and so now they have more time. But when you get that notice, if you don't already have an attorney, you want to make sure you go find one who can help support you, update the case, prep you, and attend ideally with you. There's a variety of things. Or you want to make sure you reach out to your own attorney and make sure that you're prepared. Now, if you had a prior attorney and you want to get another one for your interview, you're allowed to do that. It's just that you need to act quickly, because when you don't have that much time, everything could be rushed. And a lot of good attorneys, a lot of busy attorneys, or all pretty busy are working really hard around the clock to meet all these deadlines. So on the day of your interview, there's a interview notice that says bring all this stuff, right? But some of the things that are really important are your identification, even if it's old passports and IDs, birth certificates, marriage, the civil documents we just mentioned, a copy of the prior 589. We also have an updated statement if it's been an old, more than maybe a couple years. And we also have an updated 589 or a list of the changes. So make it easier for the asylum officer when you're going through the interview. Uh, Now, you need to bring an interpreter if you're not going to have the interview in English. That needs to be paid by you. I highly suggest making sure that you know that they speak the language properly, know the key terms, know your story. And if they're generally a contractor, but what I would suggest is that they have looked at your statement, maybe we're in a prep with you ideally, and hopefully they have experience. Your spouse and children under 21, if they were included. Now, if they were under 21 when you filed, and they're still on the case, then they need to be there at the interview as well. And a certified translation of anything that's not in English. Now, when we have our clients prepare for, we like to do a mock interview, but before they come in or have a Zoom call, we make sure that they've reviewed their application and their affidavit and have remember it. Because the thing, what I've seen is that when clients have submitted this many years ago, it's painful, it's traumatic to have to relive and revisit a lot of these facts. And a lot of times I think the your survival mechanism is to push it down deep down and try to forget. But unfortunately, you need to remember at this time, you need to remember these details. So make a list, make a list of all the changes there are to the case, or make an updated 589, verify translations, see what needs to be updated. And what our firm does is we do a mock interview. But I really suggest clients to review the application, think about how they would want to update the case before we have that first mock up interview, so that they come prepared. So really it comes down to three sections. We have the application review, which I often call the lie detector test because it's a chance to see a baseline. I mean, when were you born? Where did you go to school? When did you go to the next school? Where do you live? These types of things have true answers, right? And so you put those answers on the form, you should be able to remember those answers. So they're seeing how you communicate, how quickly the answers come to your mind, and how, what your thought process is. Then they go into the statement of the story. Now, this one, yeah, they've read your statement, they know they have it, but they want to hear you say it. And if you said two people did this to me, and then later when you're telling the story, you say three, well, they're going to be asking you where's the discrepancy. So it's important for you to be able to clarify and bring your written statement to life. And this is why if language is an issue, it can be better to have a translator with you, the interpreter, so that way they can help you be more authentic and vocal in your language. And then I call the security questions. They'll probably call it regular questions. Now, if this is like, have you ever harmed anyone? Where have you traveled to? Have you ever done any military training? Those types of things. And in a prep, we go over a lot of those questions, but they're basically what we call trig, or like screening for security, basically. And they'll ask your children too. So that's why when we do a prep, we want to talk to every derivative on the case so that they understand. And one thing to note is, let's say you have a spouse and some kids that are going to come, that are part of your application. What normally happens is every single person will go in initially, they'll do the oath that they say the truth, they show their ID, the officer will explain what's happening, they'll do the security questions first, and then they'll be let the family walk everybody out, let the family go, and then bring back the primary on the application, and then they'll go through the application review and the story. That's generally how it goes, so that they don't have to sit around and wait. And in fact, the lobby could get busy and they let them go. In the Houston Asylum office, there's a lot, like a little restaurants and things downstairs. And it's generally fine for them if the asylum officer says, okay, to go, not leave the asylum office premises. There is times when we needed to call in one of the dependents on the case. So watching their phone and having the interview notice to be able to get back in is a smart idea. Some of the things that'll cause red flags in the asylum adjudication would be delayed filing. So if it took longer than a year to apply, or there's not a strong, extraordinary, or changed circumstances, if the statement seems to be all over the place, not in chronological order, not very clear, not real written, inconsistency in the timeline, sort of hopping all over the place, multiple visits to a country that they're seeking asylum, like why did they go back? When did they truly feel harm? When was that moment? I say travel to suspect countries because there are some countries that are more tied to terrorist organization and activities, and so they'll want to know why you went there. So when there's not a question on the form, but they do ask this in the security questions: where have you traveled to? When did you travel there? And was it for business, pleasure, or what was the purpose? So for clients that have traveled a lot, I usually make them make a list of those countries and the reasons and the dates, so that we don't have to waste time in the interview and can have it readily available. Because when we get to that part, usually this can take time unnecessarily that steals away from the story that we want to get across. And then the other red flag could be not a clear nexus, like maybe you were robbed, but it had nothing to do with a protected ground. It was just lawlessness and violence. If it was tied to, religion or nationality, race, those are the things that would make you protected and it could be considered persecution. So other problematic factors that happen is that rambling, not answering the question. Let me give you an example. An officer recently said, if I ask you what type of phone do you have, I want you to tell me, is it an Android? Is it an iPhone? Don't tell me which mall you went to, how you bought it, what the person selling it to you was, what they were wearing, what did they smell like, what did they talk about that day? And so being clear in communication, which is a lot of what we try to accomplish in our preparation, mock interviews, is important. The nonlinear thinking, like if you're hopping all over the place, which in some cultures that's very common to not be chronological. So I do try to be that bridge between the client and the officer and getting their story across. The demeanor is important, body language, nonverbal cues. They're reading your body language and nonverbal communication, and being respectful and not being aggressive or awkward in those types of ways, because that can really cause issues with the adjudicator. I mean, the adjudicator is the officer's trying to make a decision that really affects your life. So the officer is going to determine whether you're eligible and you meet the definition. They're also going to be checking you. The decision might come in 2 weeks. It might not. It depends. But if they do have a date for you to come pick it up, then they have to get that decision done. But there's been times when they call and say, we don't have a decision yet. So there have been a long processing times to getting the interview. Usually, if there's a long time for getting the decision, it's because of security checks, honestly. And sometimes you just have to file a mandamus, which is a lawsuit to be able to get those decisions back. Now, I just want to say that there's scenarios in which what'll happen is that you'll either be approved, you'll be either given a notice of intent to deny, like if they don't want to approve it and but you're still in status, and you usually have 16 days to respond, or you could get referred to immigration court. Referred does not mean denied. Referred, some people say that, but it doesn't. Referred means that they didn't approve you at the asylum office and they sent you to immigration court. And receiving a notice to appear and that being properly filed with court is when the jurisdiction shifts from USCIS asylum office to Department of Justice Executive Office of Immigration Review. So these are some of the things to consider when you're, going through whether to decide to apply or whether you're, if you decide to mandamus or do an expedite. But also it's important to be thinking about these things in general. One thing I didn't mention yet was that you should update your application if the case has been more than maybe a couple years, or if there's any edits that you need to make. And usually it's emailing the asylum office in advance, about 10 days or so before the interview, is ideal. Some offices are requiring that, some haven't required it, but the sooner the better. And most of them want some type of a digital upload if possible. If you filed online, you can easily just upload it to your case, but follow the instructions that you're provided. So overall, this is the process. If you're interested in help or want to know more, feel free to give us a call, 713-589-2085, or schedule a consultation online at rubypowerslaw.com. We have a lot of updates on a lot of our social media accounts. We have a ton of experience and we have multiple attorneys, not all seen here, who are working with our clients, and we're prepping, we're updating, and we're attending these interviews. And we've been doing affirmative asylum for quite a long time. So thank you for watching. Please feel free to share with anyone else who could be useful. This could be useful. And thank you. And